Now entering Nerdist.com.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 45, The Gamesters of Triskelion.
Welcome into Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. This week, a game of thralls. Compliments of the Gamesters of Triskelion. Facing off, the thralls John Champion and Ken Ray.
Hold on a second. We will not fight for your amusement.
That's right. We'll fight for our own amusement. We'll analyze this episode of Star Trek, as we do all of them, taking it apart for messages, morals, and meanings, and figuring out whether the episode stands the test of time.
Oh, I like their energy. 50 Quatloos on the pasty one.
They're both pretty pasty.
Well, the pastier one then.
Providers, please, this is only an exhibition. This is not a competition. Though I will say I've been working my brain muscles. Smart Quatloons are on me.
Ken, the only thing that I will bet my Quatloos on is that we will say Quatloos at least 10 more times before this episode is over.
I've already screwed it up. I said Quatloons. So,
Oh.
In fairness to me, I live near the Canadian border, so maybe...
That's what they have in Canada is Quatloons?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Quatloonies, I believe they called them up there. Now I'm thinking maybe the Quatloos should be on you because I've already made my first mistake. Maybe it was fatal. We'll find out as the match progresses.
Well, if we're talking about Quatloos, we can only be talking about one thing, and that is the Gamesters of Triskelion. So welcome, joining us here on Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, where we will pick apart that episode. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, Ken, I'm so ready for this. I'm ready to flex my gladiatorial muscles in the realm of trivia.
You know, I will say really quickly, if all you're going to do is, say what the providers have already said, you're just trying to curry favor. I'm beginning to think this game is rigged. But go ahead. Do your little trivia thing. And when it comes down to, Braino e Braino, we'll see who wins. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get in your head. Please, do the trivia thing.
This neck thing is getting a little tight. All right. So, first of all, if we're talking about the Gamesters of Triskelion, it is impossible to talk about this show without talking about Angelique Pettyjohn, who is the standout icon of this episode. She plays Shahna, the game thrall who is assigned to Kirk. And interestingly enough, if you look at the overview of her career, she appeared in Clambake with Elvis. By the way, Ken, we've had another Elvis co-star on Star Trek so far. Do you know who that is? Another female co-star?
Was it Princess from Father Knows Best?
Oh, no, you were so close. It was Celeste Yarnell who appeared in The Apple as Martha Landon. She was in an Elvis movie as well. And here's what's interesting about Angelique Pettyjohn. So she did a lot of TV in the 60s. And later on in the late 70s, early 80s, she did some films of an adult nature. Where you can look those up on your own. And she made a small career out of selling posters of herself as Shahna, both in and out of that costume on the convention circuit. So that was kind of in the late 70s. So a good 10 years after they made this show, she was back in the costume, and then they did the racier version of that poster. And that was kind of a big deal on the convention circuit when you got that poster and got that autographed.
How many Quatloos do you think those would go for today?
You know what? I have to set up my eBay Quatloo converter to find that out. but I now I kind of want one because after seeing this episode again and reinvigorating my interest in that show, I think it's kind of cool. It's such a great collectible. Now, tragically, she passed away at the very young age of 48 from cancer. But like I said, she is the iconic kind of symbol of this show. Speaking of something that kind of outlasted this particular episode, Quatloos, as we said, the currency of the providers. I kind of love that they have a life of their own. In fact, I even heard Hank Moody, the David Duchovny character on Californication, refer to that currency in an episode. Just totally offhanded. How many Quatloos did this cost you? So I love that. Great bit of trivia about the voice actors who were the providers. So there were 3 of them. And Bart LaRue was the voice of the Guardian in City on the Edge of Forever. Very distinctive voice there. Walker Edmiston did the Transformers. He did a lot of cartoons, and he did Lidsville and H.R. Puffin stuff and practically all of the Sid and Marty Krofft shows from the late 60s and early to mid 70s. And then finally, Bob Johnson did the voice of the mission tape at the top of each episode of Mission Impossible. Not only the original Mission Impossible, but then the reboot or revamp they did in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's another show with just a ton of Star Trek crossover. I want to point out a couple of story things here. The original draft, called Gamesters of Pentathlon, is very similar in plot points and the description of the providers having evolved past their humanoid forms. Some interesting differences, though. In the original draft, it was a shuttlecraft crash that stranded the crew on the planet, and originally it was Sulu, not Chekov, who is the additional crew member on the planet. Now, George Takei was making the Green Berets at the time, and it has been said that he is filled with regret that he didn't get to do this episode. We might have seen more shirtless Sulu swordplay had he been around for it. And you just got to mention that music, again, from Amok Time. The battle music in this is just so good.
No Quatloos to bet for the fight? Spaceport Plaza Jewelers buys jewels, communicators, old phasers and more. Spaceport Plaza Jewelers. Top Quatloo for the bango.
Prologue. The Enterprise is in orbit around Gamma 2. Nothing there, just an automatic communications and astrogation station. Still Kirk, the captain of the ship, will check it out personally, taking Uhura and Chekov along with them. The 3 go to beam away, but they aren't beamed. They're pulled to a completely new location. Both the landing party and the Enterprise realize something is amiss. In their unknown location, Kirk and crew are beset upon by various aliens, most bearing weapons. Phasers aren't working, so they'll have to go hand to hand. Kirk's the only one getting anywhere in the fight until one of the 2 people fighting Uhura turns on Kirk instead. She's got him at the sharp end of a pointy thing as we head to the opening credits. Act 1. Kirk, Uhura, and Chekov, still under the physical control of the aliens, are greeted by Galt, master thrall of the planet Triskelion. He really likes both the fighting spirit and the fighting ability of the 3 of them. They'll do awesome here. How did he know who they were? Oh, that. The providers told him. He belongs to the providers, as do the other aliens. And Kirk, Uhura, and Chekov. They are thralls now. Now time for your training. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. On Triskelion, as a thrall. The Enterprise is still puzzling over the disappearance of the captain. There's nothing wrong with the transporter and no sign of the missing crew members on Gamma 2, so we'll have to think about this for a little while. Back on Triskelion, Kirk, Uhura, and Chekov try and escape. Doesn't go well. Turns out those neat new necklaces they've got are actually collars of obedience. One move out of line and Galt's eyes go disco, dropping the disobedient thralls in a serious amount of pain. So into their cages they go. A little time passes and in comes Lars, big blonde guy who was fighting Kirk earlier. He introduces himself as Uhura's drill thrall. He then enters her enclosure, saying in a sinister way that he has been selected for her. Kirk can't see what's going on, but it doesn't sound like things are going well for Uhura. There are sounds of a fight and a screaming Uhura. A desperate Kirk lashes out at his approaching drill thrall as we go to break. Act 2. So yeah, nothing seems to have happened to Uhura after all, though Lars is telling her that she is not allowed to refuse selection. Lars out. Meanwhile, Kirk's drill thrall tells him it's time to eat. Back aboard the Enterprise, we finally got something. Could be a trail, we're not sure. Still, it's the first sign of anything since the disappearance of the officers, so Spock is on the move. Back on Triskelion, turns out Kirk was hungry. He eats and quizzes his drill thrall, Shahna. This food's good. What do you call it? We call it nourishment. Okay, what's with the collars? Turns out his collar will be a certain color when he's developed and vended. That'll show to which provider he belongs. Oh, you mean slavery. Got it. Is Galt the only one who can control the collars of obedience, by the way? We don't talk about that. Okay, let's talk about how beautiful you are, beautiful. And the Kirk charm offensive is underway. Except she doesn't know about beautiful. And she's always been here. Her mom died in a freestyle match, which Kirk will learn about later. And now, time for exercise. This is your training harness. Put it on. On the training floor, Galt brings a thrall. Big guy, though he was apparently slow in obeying an order. So everybody's supposed to use him as target practice as part of their training. Uhura is ordered to go first, but she refuses. All 3 of the Enterprise crew refuse. Then Galt gets his disco eyes on, and they begin to choke. Briefly. Galt says Uhura has to be punished, though Kirk moves himself into her place. So now he'll be target practice. It'll hurt less than the collar, though indications are it will leave him dead. We'll find out after the break. Act 3. Kirk is getting the tar beaten out of him. Hands tied, he's pretty much unable to fight, though he does get in a good kick before the rest interval. Shahna tells Kirk that his opponent's left eye is weak. If he wants to get him, come at him from that side. And he does, which gives him enough time to free himself of his cuffs and get the drop on his massive opponent. Hold, says a disembodied voice. This is Provider 1. He and 2 others start calling out amounts of Quatloos. They're bidding on who owns the newcomers. Provider 1 wins, which sets Providers 2 and 3 betting on whether they'll live, die, or even be trainable. Way to go, newcomers. You're part of a fine herd now. Now behave, or we'll kill you. Shahna and Kirk are out on his training run. During a break, Kirk quizzes her on why the providers like to watch others fight and kill each other. It's just how things are done. Kirk begins to put a few things together. He suspects that the providers don't have bodies. He thinks they used to, and that they used to live in cities which are now just ruins. This line of conversation is making Shahna uptight, though. Maybe the charm offensive will calm her down. Look at the stars, baby. Let me whisper in your ear how awesome other ways of life are. You know, besides slavery, which is what this is. You know what's better? Love. What is love? Love is the most important thing on earth, says Kirk, especially to a man and a woman. It was 1968. Oh, Shahna says, the whole man-woman thing. When it's time to increase the herd. Yeah, I know about that. Yeah, maybe, though if Kirk had a hi-fi, he'd be playing Let's Get It On. Shahna is obviously intrigued, though uncomfortable as well. Such talk is not allowed. Fine then. Tell me about the providers. Well... And down goes Shahna. Kirk yells to the sky, "Stop it! It was my fault! Knock it off!" Act 4. Kirk continues his plea for whatever's choking Shahna to quit it. If you want to punish somebody, punish me! The voice of Provider 1 quizzes Kirk. Is that what you humans call compassion? Interesting, but it serves no purpose here. Now learn to obey. The provider releases Shahna. Kirk soothes her, though she's amazed. He risked getting the providers angry at him to save her. Well, that's what my people do. Now let's make out. Suddenly in pops Galt. Because Kirk has amused the providers, there will be no punishment. Now go to your room. Now, this whole episode we've seen the Enterprise on what may be the trail of Kirk, Uhura, and Chekov. And we've seen McCoy and Scotty second-guess Spock's every decision. They think the 3 crewmates are still in the vicinity of Gamma 2, not halfway across the galaxy. And Spock has had enough. He is in command. Do they want to follow his orders, or do they plan to mutiny? That shut him up. Tell you what, though, we'll do it my way, and if it doesn't work, then we'll do it your way. Cool? Cool. Back in his quarters, Kirk's playing on Shanna's turbulent emotions. She'd asked for him to have another drill thrall were it allowed, but Kirk says he wouldn't like that. Now let's make out. Then Kirk knocks Shahna unconscious, apologizes, takes her key and frees himself, Chekov, and Uhura. If they can find their phasers, they can short out their collars. Uh-oh, there's Galt, and he got his disco eyes going, which makes the crew swoon. By which I mean choke. It's just a brief reminder, though. Compliments of Provider 1. Back aboard the Enterprise, they seem to have actually found something. Spock will beam down to check it out. McCoy will follow. And no, they won't, because now the providers control the Enterprise. Kirk and the providers explain the setup of the society. Well, we call ourselves providers because We provide for all the thralls' needs, and besides, they're dumb and wouldn't really get what's going on. Now Kirk plays the provider's vanity against them. You're chicken. You won't show yourselves because you're afraid. Oh yeah? We'll show you. And they do. The providers, it turns out, are light-up brains under glass. It was all these mental pursuits, you see. We're like so smart, and we kind of evolved beyond the need for bodies. But we still need people. Oh, not to do work for us, but to fight. The games are the only things that give us purpose. Besides, we're only using inferior intellects like yours. Yeah, that's still uncool. Whatever, says the providers. We're going to kill you and destroy your ship. Make it look like an accident so that no one investigates us. Told you we were smart. Tell you what, says Kirk, how about a wager? We'll fight your thralls. You choose the weapons. If we win, you free us and the thralls. If we lose, the whole crew of the Enterprise will be your thralls. The providers are in, but it'll be Kirk against 3 thralls rather than all of the Enterprise crew versus all of the thralls. Oh, and it's a fight to the death. Go! Kirk's not doing bad. 2 thralls are dead and 1's injured, but by the stated rules, the injured one has to be replaced. Shahna is forced into the ring. Kirk is able to best her, though she doesn't have to die. She calls out that the thralls surrender. Probably the other 2 wish they'd thought of that. The providers concede defeat. Kirk wins. The thralls will be freed. The providers will train the thralls to govern themselves. Time for a tearful goodbye with Shahna. She'd like to come with Kirk, but, yeah, she's got a lot of learning to do, so why don't you do that and, bye. The end.
I have to tell you that this great line that my friend Dan wrote on Twitter, and it was just in quotes. It was, "Love? What is love?" Signed every alien babe right before they were banged by Captain Kirk.
Oh, golly. I will say, so I watched the episode the first time, and, I was kind of enthralled. Okay.
Oh.
But I watched it the second time, and I was like, wow, this is... So normally, Kirk is quietly putting on his pants and carrying his boots out.
Right.
Basically. And this may be the first time that he's had to say, yeah, but I've got a ship and I've got a lot of stuff. Plus, you wouldn't really like it in space. I know I said it would be awesome, but, ooh, is that the time? Tell you what, right. I'm going to go grab breakfast and you wait here and bye.
I feel so bad for Shahna.
I feel really terrible for her. It is so awful. And she even calls him on it. I mean, she, little brain that she is, according to the big brains under glass, she's like, wow, you lied to me. You used me. Kind of like chicken cat's paw. You used me. And Kirk's like, no, baby, no, come on. You were seriously the only girl for me on this planet right this minute.
Right. Until I have to leave, exactly. Which is now. Yeah.
Oh, Shahna, you just wouldn't I'm like, look over there. Mm-hmm. I felt terrible for her. I did.
Yeah.
And I would imagine we may come back to that in a bit.
We may very well. Now, the final fight scene where Kirk has risked the lives of everybody on the Enterprise. I thought it was very interesting that they state right at the beginning of the fight that there's this rule where, he's in the yellow portions and then the other game thralls are in the blue portions. And if they were to step into the wrong color space, they would immediately lose one of their weapons. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, and it's too bad that they ignored it after the first second that the fight started. Because they're just jumping all over the place, and nobody's losing weapons, and
Do you want to know why I'm so terrible at Settlers of Catan?
Why is that?
Lots of rules, and I pay no attention. It's interesting to me that you noticed that they messed up the rules. I got the big rule of if you kill somebody, then, you go ahead one thrall. Right. But if you only injure them, then they can be replaced with a perfectly healthy thrall. Why that stuck with me and the rest of it didn't, I don't know, because I'm reading your notes before we start.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, they stepped on the wrong color. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember totally tuning that out. I remember completely tuning out. And you're like, okay, here are the rules.
Well, see, I was looking at that big pattern with the blue and yellow tiles, and I kept thinking, as I was watching it, 2 and 3 times, like, that would make a great kitchen floor or pattern in the bathroom, something like that, you know?
The whole time I was thinking Triominoes. In fact, I thought that might be the game of Triskelion until turns out not.
Until they got out the weapons. Yeah. And I like that you mentioned that Kirk gives the order for them to go hand to hand. I don't know why I love that so much, but I do.
Because they wouldn't have thought of it?
They wouldn't have. They would just
because Chekov would have just kept like aiming his phaser. No, really, you're supposed to be dying right now. You should be. Why isn't this? Ow!
You're right. Right.
You hit me. Who gave you the order for hand to hand? Can somebody give the order for hand to hand, please? Because this aiming a phaser thing isn't working. Oh, hand to hand. Right. Okay.
Go.
Exactly.
Hey, speaking of Chekov, did you notice that it was interesting? There's a little gender bending there from a human perspective. We don't know anything about the species of the game thrall that is assigned to him.
Yeah.
And then he has, as Spock would say, a rather provincial reaction to this.
Well, okay, let's not do much more on that because we're definitely, that's coming.
Okay.
It was interesting though. It was interesting because I know, well, I mean, like I said, when Kirk does his whole, let's wait.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know that was, you just heard me like blow up. I was working my brain hard for this match, John. So forgive me if I'm a little.
Yeah. Oh no, I understand. I understand.
Go ahead.
Another thing that we can learn from this, still can't trust Andorians. We've only met Andorians a few episodes ago in Journey to Babel. And what happened with the Andorian there? Oh, he tried to kill Kirk.
Wait, wasn't that a fake Andorian though?
Well, you had a fake Andorian and you had a real Andorian, but yeah, the fake Andorian was trying to kill Kirk. But at least Kirk is used to Andorian combat because in this they just throw an Andorian in there.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad for it. Although it was neat to see. I mean, it's sort of like the time that we saw the Nancy Crater monster turn up at in the Squire of Gothos. It was neat to see a returning alien besides a Vulcan or a Klingon.
Right, very true.
Or a Klingon.
or either one.
Whichever. Yeah, it was neat. I mean, it was neat to say, hey, I know what that is. That's an Andorian. I don't know that we've ever actually seen a real one, but good. Look at him. And sadly, things are not going to go well for this Andorian.
This portion of Mission Log brought to you by Good Boy Collars of Obedience. Good Boy, the preferred collars of obedience of Provider 2.
So I didn't know exactly how to bring it up in the story recap, but there is something, if this were a book instead of a TV show for the 1960s, or, I mean, if this were a TV show for the 90s or beyond, Uhura gets raped in this episode.
That moment made me so uncomfortable that I didn't write it in my notes.
And here's why I will give it credit. It was very well done. Now, I'm not saying, it was tasteful rape. I'm saying, I mean, when that's happening, generally speaking, when they do stuff like that, like when they don't show you what's going on, you're like, it's because they didn't have the money for the effects. Or, okay, they're going to tell us what happened because they can't really afford to show it or they can't think of how to show it. They don't tell us what happens here.
Well, no, but you see the shadow and you hear the screams and you see the look on Kirk's face.
Yes.
And it is the most serious, dramatic part of this episode.
Yes.
And it happens early on. Yeah.
It's similar to, I mean, if you want to treat an episode of Star Trek like, a movie that has really stood the test of time pretty well, a lot of people remember how absolutely horribly violent the moment was in, what's the Tarantino movie? Reservoir Dogs. A lot of people remember how disgusting and graphic and awful it is when Mr. Blonde cuts off the cop's ear.
Right.
It doesn't happen on camera. And there are so many people who can tell you exactly how horrible and disgusting that image was. And what Tarantino actually does is he moves the camera. He pans the camera up and to the left. So we don't see it. But it is so well done that a lot of people remember it. And you got kind of the same thing going on here with Uhura. Now, we do have to back up. It is 1968 television. So when we come back, nothing has happened to her.
Yeah, and that's a really weird part of it.
Yeah. Well, except there is a distinction made later. I mean, if you go back and piece it together, if you watch the episode a second time, with an eye on that specifically, there's a distinction between what's happening with most of them and what has already happened with Uhura. When Tamoon, Chekov's androgynous drill thrall, comes in, Chekov says, "You have been selected for me?" To which Tamoon replies, no, I'm just your drill thrall. Though there is indication at some point they may be selected for each other. Well, obviously being selected for each other, I mean, has to do with well, it's tough to say. I mean, is it about mating? Is it about increasing the herd? Or is it about subjugation? Because when it happens like top of the mark for Uhura and Lars, it seems to me that it's very much about subjugation. And again, I mean, then, This Week in Sexism, brought to you by Utz Potato Chips. I mean, this again is like immediately the woman is subjugated. Immediately the woman is just knocked down as many pegs as possible, as quickly as possible. And the way to do that is that particular kind of physical violence, it seems. And I'm not, and the thing is, I'm not actually necessarily faulting Star Trek for sexism this time, because that's a way that people have used to control races, when they're conquering people, for golly, thousands of years at this point.
But here's the thing. It stands out because at no point later in the episode is that ever referred. At no point does Kirk ever say, "Are you okay?" Or,
well, because it didn't happen. The hard part.
Well, right. Yeah, but that's the hard part to wrap your head around, because you see this indicated scene anyway. Yeah. And like I said, it's the most serious thing that happens within the context of this episode. Yeah. And then the fact that you see her at the end and Uhura is fine, and her costume is not even ripped. Right. She's all right.
No, you see her a minute later and she's fine. I mean, this really didn't happen. I mean, this is. Kudos to the writer, kudos to the director. Nichelle Nichols can scream. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you can't on 1968 television make that happen. And so it was there for people who are thinking about it as more than Buck Rogers. It was there for more than people who are thinking about it as something besides Wagon Train and Space. Yeah. But it doesn't actually happen. So you're right. You don't address it. In fact, you can address it. You cannot address it, because then you have shown it and you can't show it. You can't say it. Yeah. But it was an incredibly powerful moment and really difficult. I mean, I spent the first time thinking, is that happening? Is that happening? And then they show you that it's not happening. And so I have that nice sort of 1968, thank goodness, because I thought something terrible was happening. And then the second time I watched it in preparation for this show, I was like, oh, yeah, that happened.
Well, that's just it. You can watch it and think, oh, well, Uhura is just really scared of this guy. Yeah. Because he's scary. Yeah. But no, the way that scene is played out, it's... They
gave you that out. They gave the viewers that out. And so I don't want to say I don't want to say I'm okay with it. I will say it was actually mature storytelling, sort of beyond its years. I mean, there's no way, like I've said a couple of times already, there's no way you can show that then. So it was there for people who were, ready for it or willing to pick up on it. And for people who weren't, what happened? She got scared. He left. And in fact, there are other things that happen, like the way she ditches him later. She complained that she didn't like the food. And Lars is like, oh, I'm going to go tell. Okay. Right. Really? That's how she got. So, okay, this guy did not do anything to her, except had this been a movie, had this come later in TV life, had this been a novel. So just kind of a, I don't even know if that's a thing. So there it is. Now, at the same time,
I'm really glad you brought it up. Yeah.
At the same time, the thing with Tamoon, that's, I mean, they are taking a risk there that you can sort of write off as comedy. It's sort of the same thing like when Paul Lynde would be on something.
Well, see, that's exactly what I was thinking. You had this history in entertainment of, the flamboyant character or the obvious man who is cross-dressing like a Milton Berle or something like that. But this is really interesting because in the reality of Star Trek, you're accepting that these things are real, that they are, it is what you were seeing. It's not like the separation of comedy of, that's just a guy in a dress. Like in this case, it's this kind of disturbing, sexually ambiguous thing that is really making Chekov creeped out.
Yeah.
So again, for all the points within the story that you can point at and say, well, that's really forward thinking. That's a little daring. Kudos for putting that in there. You know?
And yet at the same time, I don't want to say you have an apology for Tamun's character, but you also have very much a, walking the man-woman line thing when Kirk is like, love is the most important thing on our planet. Mm-hmm. And Shahna says, what is love? And Kirk's like, oh, that's something for men and women.
Yeah.
That is a man-woman thing.
Yeah, not for a man in Tamun.
Right. Not for a man and whatever Tamun is. I think, whatever Tamun was. It was, so it's kind of strange. I mean, you do get a bit of forward thinking as far as the possibility of Tamun, although again, that is played for comedy as well. I mean, you can have Jack Lemmon in a dress kissing a guy because, oh, it's Jack Lemmon and he's a comedian and this is a comedy, so that's funny, so this is perfectly acceptable. So Chekov maybe being wooed by a man is kind of okay because it's Chekov, I mean, he is always he's always attempted comic relief. You can argue about whether he is comic relief or not, but he's always attempted comic relief. So this happening to Chekov, oh, that's so funny. Put Tamun in with Kirk. No. No. That show is not going to be written.
No. Not at all. So I want to move on from those points, but I'm so glad that you brought that up because I watched it and I was disturbed and creeped out, and it needed to be addressed. Sports and gambling on a violent sport. I thought this was all very interesting. Like, I'm not a sports guy, and I'm definitely not a gambling guy. So when people get very excited about gambling on boxing and ultimate fighting, and I do not get it. I do not understand it at all. And I thought it was really interesting that Kirk has his confrontation with the providers, and he calls them out for not being evolved, and they're engaged in slavery and all this stuff. But then he decides to take them on their own terms. Mm-hmm. And make the ultimate bet. And it's another one of those situations where, gosh, it's a good thing that Kirk is really lucky because there's not like an out for him at any point in this. And I kept thinking, as the Enterprise crew is in the ship listening to all of this happening, there's got to be somebody on board thinking, hey, if Kirk starts to lose, can we just turn this thing around and go really, really fast? Because this does not bode well for us at all.
Well, we know they couldn't because the providers had control of the Enterprise.
But I thought they might have been distracted while the fight was going on.
Well, that's possible, certainly.
Yeah.
The other thing that that was kind of interesting about that, actually, is originally Kirk says, hey, my crew against all your thralls, 1-to-1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, like... Again, that guy that you're talking about who's like, could we turn and flee, has to have been sitting there going, wait a minute, I'm fighting what now?
Yeah, right.
And they get to choose the weapons? Do I get one?
Yeah.
And it's not going to be one of those non-functioning phasers, is it? Because...
Yeah.
Yeah. What I found, actually, when you're talking about, Kirk and talking about slavery and talking to the providers about how they're, First of all, I don't understand how the providers arranging games gives them purpose. Because they say that, oh, well, that's the only thing we're good for now. Or that's the only purpose we have at this point. It's like, well, I mean, this is really just for your amusement. That'd be like, filming a television show that only you watch. Yeah. At the same time, how Kirk's nose didn't grow when he was trying to justify his argument, I don't understand. We have found that all life forms in the galaxy are capable of superior development, said Kirk. Mm-hmm. Well, except for that cloudy honey smelling thing from that planet. I forget where that is, but seriously, leave those things alone. Yeah. And also any computers or robots that are sentient. Yeah, kill those. Because, mm-hmm. I mean, seriously, I mean, they're just robots, right? I mean, sure, they think. Sure, some of them even seem to feel, but don't worry about it. Oh, and one time we found these little things that we thought might have been part of a gigantic, widely dispersed neural net. Step on those, okay? Because they are just, I mean, but don't mess with the Horda. And don't mess with people.
Right.
Because we have found that all life forms in the galaxy are capable of superior development. Mm-hmm. Asterisk.
Yeah.
Unless I don't wanna. That's pretty much. Yeah.
Right. Well, there was an interesting parallel, though, to like this old justification for racism and classifying races as superior, inferior by saying that, just by claiming, well, these other things are not as evolved, therefore it's okay for us to use them for entertainment, for sport, for slavery, etc. So maybe they were trying to sneak in a little thing there, a little message there. But yeah, Kirk's justification doesn't hold up that well.
I didn't feel like they were trying to sneak that in. I feel like it feels like that was definitely there. I mean, it was fascinating for the provider to say, well, we're only using inferior intellects, but they're only inferior intellects because they're keeping them inferior. Shahna picks up pretty quickly on Kirk's truth about there is a starship, and stars are actually bigger things than what you see. I mean, she understands stuff, fairly quickly. The only reason she's dumb is because she's being kept dumb.
Right.
So it didn't feel to me like it was a subtle thing. I mean, it's not a retelling of the slavery story, but I mean, Kirk calls it. I mean, this is slavery.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're not still debating slavery, although, I mean, certainly in 1968, you did have a lot of racial unrest. Not that you don't even today, but I mean, it was much more of a polarizing and sort of front and center issue.
Right. Well, and that was just one more way to justify it, to say, well, it's okay for us to be racist because we've determined that these are the limits of that race or these people. So,
does it work as well? Do you think if you say classist?
Probably like saying that there are certain people or certain classes that are incapable of working their way up to something else.
Well, I mean, not saying that. I mean, going at it from the other way. I mean, instead of saying that the Gamesters were racist, is it better to say that they're classist? We can treat these people this way because these people aren't as smart as we are.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so instead of making it as smart, let's say as privileged or as rich or as something like that. We can justify what we do because we are superior, but not in terms of race, because I mean, let's face it, anybody who ends up in on the game board is mud person as far as the giant brains under glass are concerned. I mean, they're not like, oh, we don't like Andorians, so we harvest as many Andorians as we can and we make them fight because we hate them. It's more, nothing is on the level that we are, so everything is for our amusement.
Are they kind of like the Telosians, anything in that respect, that here's this evolved species that has lost touch with the physical world. Yeah. So that So they're playing this out through the expense of whoever they come across in the galaxy.
Can I ask? And I feel certain that anybody who wrote the show would say no, but having gone about a season and a half through Star Trek now, at least through the original series, is there kind of a subtle anti-egghead theme in Star Trek? Because you mentioned the Telosians. Yeah. And certainly the Gamesters of Triskelion. Miri, to a certain extent, is an anti-egghead episode. These scientists were trying to figure out a way to prolong life prolongation. It'll get you every time. And what that ended up doing was killing all the, functioning people on the planet and leaving a bunch of children who stay children for 300 years until the minute they become adults, they die. Right. Spock certainly always wanting to study new life forms, or at least he was, until that pretty much got beaten out of him by Kirk killing or trying to kill everything that they made along the way. Right. I'd put Dr. Roger Corby in there. He had this idea again about life prolongation. That'll get you. And we ended up sort of turning him into scrap metal as best we could. Yeah. I mean, it's not might makes right exactly, but there's more way of the fighter or way of the thoughtful warrior, maybe, than there is give peace a chance or give thought a chance.
Well, I mean, Kirk is always struggling with, is he a soldier or a diplomat?
No, he's not. Well, Kirk is reminded sometimes that he can be a diplomat. I mean,
that's a better. Yeah, there you go. There's a better description of it. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not saying anybody on Star Trek was like, nah, enough with these smart people. But it is amazing. I mean, there's like it's like smart to a point. It really is kind of a pioneer show. It's kind of a get your hands dirty show. And anytime we find somebody who's back east trying to figure out well, how do we price this railroad thing that we're going to move across? Well, they're the suckers and the saps, and the good people, the real people, are the ones who are down in it. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think back to To an episode like A Taste of Armageddon, where Kirk says, okay, we're barbarians. We admit that we're barbarians, but we choose not to kill. We choose to be better than who we are. But Star Trek is constantly balancing this line of the better nature, the higher thought, the lofty goals and ideals with the kind of rough and tumble as we see here. So there may be a little bit of that anti-egghead, or at least saying that if we go too far down that road, then there's a risk of becoming totally detached from the reality of our physical surroundings. At least we've seen it in a few episodes.
Yep. And so some people apparently think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, well,
I don't want to start that fight again, please.
Oh, it'll come up time and time again, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of something that has come up here, Kirk using seduction as his means to an end. I think it's just so much more acute in this episode. And we said before that he's so careless about leaving Shahna behind. And for all the planets that we've left behind, we go back to the followers of Vol and these places of the Enterprise should have just said, hey, send somebody back in a few months, a few years, check on them, please.
Right.
Because I'm not totally sure that the providers are good at providing because they've spent who knows how long just working out their gambling system. I really feel for these people, these creatures on this planet, and I want them to be okay.
There were two things that I thought about for this episode. First of all, I thought about ending my recap by saying, well, here we are again, Kirk ruining another perfectly good society. Which, of course, is not the case at all. But the other thing that I did
they are
think,
not perfectly good.
No, not by a long shot. But the other thing I did think was the second the Enterprise crew beams out, do you think the provider said, all right, everybody, back with your collars?
Yes, that's exactly what I thought.
Are they gone? Are we clear? All right.
Yeah, now we're going to educate you to live on your own. If living on your own means that you'll be fighting in the arena again tomorrow.
Exactly.
See you all then. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of surprising that there was no mention of we're going to leave somebody here. We're going to help you. I mean, the Gamesters of Triskelion actually evolved beyond needing bodies. But Kirk says, all right, here's what's going to happen. If I win, you're going to train these people.
Yeah, exactly.
To do for themselves. Like you're doing.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure. No, I don't get it.
I mean, Kirk kind of says at that point with the providers that this is what they do. They go around the galaxy, lifting people out of oppression and providing them with a way to learn and grow for themselves. Except for all the times that they just leave,
right,
and don't really make sure that that's happening.
We help societies rise up, but you guys got this.
Yeah, right. You're gonna be okay. Yeah.
We said we would. Oh, you're right, slave owner. You're completely to be trusted.
I'll wager the guys are gonna wanna sum up this episode now. Who wants to lay some Quatloos on that?
It's that time of the show, Ken, where we get to look back on what we've learned, what we've gleaned, what we've picked up from the episode. And now we're looking at Gamesters of Triskelion and trying to determine if the production holds up. Does this hold up as an episode of Star Trek now going on 50 years later?
I was not impressed by it watching it the first time, but going back and watching it the second time, I'd say yeah. And I don't know, maybe I was just tired or maybe I was distracted because rewatching it to make the notes and try to, really get down into it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was pretty compelling. I mean, certainly there's some goofy stuff like, oh, we're choking. Oh, we're not, Right. I mean, there's some things that are a little goofy. I like whoever it was that played Galt. He actually, he doesn't walk, he floats. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, he obviously is walking, and sometimes he doesn't quite get that right. Mm-hmm. But he is obviously meant to look as if he is, sort of hovering or floating or something like that. He's creepy looking.
Yeah.
I can't tell if that's if he has a certain speckled skin of an alien or if it's just he hasn't seen the sun in a long time because he spends a lot of time in the catacombs or what the deal is. But he's kind of creepy looking. The monsters would have been more scary, if they hadn't looked like that tabletop hockey game that we all played in the 80s.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like the whole world was being controlled by a broken Simon.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say I personally, I think this episode works. What about you?
Yeah. It's funny to me how iconic this single episode is. I mean, it has been parodied, ripped apart, mocked, referenced, paid homage to so many times. The Simpsons has done this episode. And you sort of can't picture a space babe in a tinfoil bikini without referencing Shahna from this episode. And here's the thing. This episode should be terrible. It really should be. It has no right to be any better than Drek because you have all these tropes. You have Kirk seducing the girl, but then not caring and just leaving at the end. You have the shirtless Kirk giving the impassioned speech to save his crew. You've got kind of a chintzy set and kind of chintzy monsters battling this out. It has no right to hold up the way that it does, but I have to tell you, I loved it. I loved it from beginning to end, and watching it a second time and a third time. I love this episode, and I kind of can't put my finger on it because it really plays into every cliche, good and bad, that you think about when you think about Star Trek. And even as badly as they treat Shahna, and just as beautiful as I think she is, I find that to be a really compelling character. There's a sadness there. And the actress, Angelique Pettyjohn, is really beautiful, but she also has this really alien quality that when you get past just the extremeness of the outfit and the hair, I just think it works. It works in such a bizarre way.
Yeah.
You know?
There are... there are things. I get what you're saying about this episode shouldn't work as well as it does. There are so many elements of this episode that we've seen before. I mean, it is not a leap at all to say that the Gamesters are the same as the Telosians. Well, not the same, but similar. Very similar to the Telosians. We've heard the Kirk speech. We call it the Kirk speech. We don't even bother saying, you know that part where Kirk said, no. We've heard the Kirk speech. We know this. Now, I will say... I was laughing earlier about Kirk's sort of one-night stand with Shahna. Yeah. There's something about her that makes the whole thing okay. It's a little melodramatic at the end when she says, I'll look up, I'll see the stars, and I will remember.
Sure.
But it actually kind of works. I mean, she got used into it, which blows. But I mean, you get the feeling that this is a turning point for her in a good way. Now, a lot of times we say, boy, I'd like to come back in 15 years and see how things are going. I don't want to see what happens to her after this, because that's honestly probably going to be one of the brightest moments of her life.
Yeah, please just get her on a ship and get her out of there, okay?
That would be nice,
really,
wouldn't it?
Get her to Earth or a starbase or something, you know?
Keep her away from Harry Mudd.
Yes, please.
But, it would be kind of nice to say. I mean, you know, crud, that chick went from the 80s on the Enterprise to the future and Star Trek, whichever, the search for... pods or something.
Star Trek 4.
Yes, I was kidding, actually. No, you see, I was doing that thing where I try not to say the name because I think people know it.
Right.
Anyway, I think this episode absolutely stood up.
But is there a message?
Well, one of our earliest messages, it might have even been from the cage. I think we can both agree, John, and this may even be exactly how I said it then. I think we can both agree, John, that slavery is bad.
Hang on. Yes, I will agree with that.
And I think that may have been your answer when we said it 40-something episodes ago. Mm-hmm. There are things that you can pull out of it. I mean, there's no "you see, Timmy,"
right?
As we often run together to one word. I don't think there's any one of those, but I mean, there are definitely strong messages, morals, and meanings here. And there is, I mean, despite the fact that it's sort of covered over, there's a real darkness about this episode too. Maybe that's what does it. I mean, we've seen all of these things before, as you said earlier, but they haven't been quite as visceral.
Right.
And right. There's something about it that, I would actually, this may have actually ended up in my top 10 so far.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, we do this thing where we also kind of judge episodes trying to figure out if they work, if you were introducing somebody to Star Trek. And I feel like the problem with this episode is only that the iconography of it has sort of outgrown the episode. And that's the problem. Because people will kind of look at it and they'll go, oh, well, the cheesy set, the cheesy costumes, whatever. But there's a lot of meat here, and there is good acting. And like you said, that underlying current of darkness is very strange. And then played off by the comic moments, like with Chekov and that weird burgeoning relationship with Tamun,
Yeah.
All of that stuff is very strange. I think other messages that I picked up from the episode, turning your life over to a life of gambling, sports betting is bad. Don't do that. And unless, of course, you're Kirk and you bet the lives of your entire crew, not even understanding what the game will be. And boy, you're lucky when you win.
Well, okay, I can kind of go along with you on that first one, although I will say 3 words to maybe counter that.
Okay.
Vegas, baby. Vegas. And I feel certain that, if we ever end up in some place like Las Vegas for, any reason, you and I may toss back a couple and talk about it. And if we run into anybody we know, we would like to hear what they think too, but you don't have to wait for chance. There are plenty of ways to get in touch with us, and we would love to hear from you on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. The handle is Mission Log Pod. Or you can call us, 323-522-5641. That number again, 323-522-5641. You can email us, missionlog@roddenberry.com. And please don't forget to check out our very nice home on the web, missionlogpodcast.com. Remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log.
Hey, and next week, everybody, do like me and Ken and bust out your pinstripe suits and fedoras, because we're going to be looking at a piece of the action.
Some of the music for the Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. Quitting time. Another day, another Quatloo. Time to go blow it on video Fizbin. End transmission.
Now leaving Nerdist.com.